Welcome 32 it, everybody. My name's TJ Winger, back with another episode of Beyond the Tape. Excited to break down today's video. We're going to be talking about the Senior Bowl, and we're going to be doing our preview for the offensive side of the ball. If you missed the defensive conversation, we did that a couple episodes back, actually 2 episodes to be exact. It was tagged along with a quarterfinal, second round college football review. So 2 parts of that podcast. Maybe you missed the defensive preview. Definitely encourage you to go back, check that out. It was also right in the middle of me doing a lot of defensive player rejects. So it was a good time for me to go ahead and talk about a lot of those guys, the players I'm excited to see. We did our pick 6, the top 6 players I was most excited to see down in Mobile. Today, I'm going to unveil my top 5. And of course, we're going to go, position group by position group on the offensive side. Talk about some of the names that I'm most intrigued by and who I think can kind of boost their stock the most with a good week down in Mobile. We'll talk about some guys who, maybe move from second, third round conversations to back into the first, and some guys with a good week who could go from late first round to maybe top half of the first 32 picks. So a lot of names to talk about in today's video. This one won't be super long, not like our last mock, our last pod. If you missed that, I reacted to and broke down Dane Brugler's latest 2-round mock draft for The Athletic. Highly encourage you to go back, check that out, whether it's on YouTube or X. You can see either live stream on either of those platforms. But if you're watching either one of those, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or follow on X if you're watching there. And of course, engage in a conversation. That's really what we're trying to do here. A lot of different opinions, especially at this point in the draft season. Everyone's kind of really in the thick of it or starting to get into the thick of it. So let me hear your thoughts on some of these Senior Bowl guys and some potential players that you're looking at as a good fit for your favorite team. All that down. Let's go ahead and jump into this one, get into the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about. Just using the Senior Bowl website here, you can see all the names. I'm not going to talk about each and every person, but off rip, I do want to talk about a couple of the TCU guys. You see Jack Beck, and of course, thoughts, prayers, wishes with his family. Of course, his brother was one of those tragically lost at the New Year's Eve into New Year's Day terrorist attack down in New Orleans. So thoughts, prayers, well wishes for the Beck family with Tiger passing. But hopefully we do get to see this opportunity to see Jack. Really interesting build. Kind of looks like a guy who could be a fun power slot option. Could be a good week for him and a good opportunity for him to solidify his stock as like a first 2 rounds, definitely a top 3 round type of receiver. Savion Williams is another fun one. TCU receiver who, 6'5", 220 plus pounds, and moves all over the field, outside, inside, and in the backfield, using a jet sweep. So he's got this really interesting blend of athleticism plus the frame, and then wild and varying usage. So he's great with the ball in his hands. Not a whole lot in regard, at least not that I've seen, and kind of looking at some of the advanced metrics. Not a guy that has like a whole lot of like field stretching, but it'll be an opportunity here at the Reese Senior Bowl. Those one-on-one drills, can you beat outside press coverage? You're going to see a lot of that in those one-on-ones, and be a lot of clips on Twitter and X talking about those types of plays. So this is an opportunity for him to be like, yeah, I'm this insane, frame for a receiver with awesome athletic traits. You can give me the ball. He can be an easy button on offense. But this could be his opportunity to show, hey, like I've also taken steps as a receiver and I can beat one-on-one coverage, because then you're talking about, okay, this guy needs to shoot up receiver rankings, because if he can do all that, there's a lot to be excited about then. Jalen Lane, Daquan Felton, a couple of Virginia Tech receivers I'm also excited to see. Jalen Royals is one that if you've been in this process for a while now, he's a good athlete and a route runner that can win at multiple levels. What does that look like? This should be the type of event where Jalen Royals kind of boosts his stock. Really like his tape a good bit. Brew McCoy is a guy who's battled a good amount of injuries during his time at Tennessee, but 6'3", 230 pounds, like got that X receiver build to him. And this is a good opportunity for him to kind of showcase that physicality that he can play with. It could definitely be a guy who works himself into that, round 3 mix. There were some guys last year, and even the years before that, where it's like, look at Michael Wilson 2 years ago, injured, a lot of missed time, not a whole lot of Stanford tape to watch, but then has a great Senior Bowl, ends up going somewhere in the first 3 rounds. So it could be a similar type of thing here for Brew McCoy. Elic Ayomanor we'll talk about later on, not to give away too much, but man, I'm so pumped to see this redshirt sophomore, see a lot of Cortland Sutton in his game. Good athlete, good contested catch ability, ideal frame, X receiver, but you get creative with him and use him as a power slot. He's a really fun player, and back into the first round, I don't think it's impossible with a good week here at the Senior Bowl, but kind of feels like maybe in that second round mix right now, but definitely a guy who can make himself some money down at Mobile. Jamal Pritchett, then we get down to Tez Johnson. He's just, the last couple of years we've had a small wide receiver prove that, hey, I can play on the outside. I can beat press coverage. 2 years ago, it's Tank Dell at 5'10". Last year it's Roman Wilson right around that same size. two guys that coming into the Senior Bowl, you probably would have said they're probably slot onlys, right? They made themselves a lot of money, Roman Wilson to get on the field, but he still went in the top 100 and he showcased, hey, I can hang with the best of them on the outside. I can beat press coverage despite my size. And that's exactly what Tank Dell did the year before that. So I think this is a good opportunity for Tez Johnson to show, hey, I'm not just the slot merchant. You're still probably talking about a guy who's going to play the Y, be off the line of scrimmage, get him in motion, get him a head start, because he is a great athlete and he's a really dynamic route runner as well. But plus, get him in motion. He could be an easy button to an offense, right? Get him yards after the catch opportunities. He definitely will excel in that. But there's also a lot of money to be made here if he shows, hey, I may be small, but you put someone on the line of scrimmage, try to press me, good luck. And that's kind of what happened with Tank Dell, right? It was like he had these great release packages, and then it basically just set up the situation of, if you press this guy, you're gambling, because if you miss, it's 6 for the offense. And we've seen that bear out in some of Tank Dell's career. Obviously, a lot of injuries in there as well. But I think this is a good opportunity for Tez Johnson to show a lot of the same stuff. That like, hey, press me if you dare, because if you lose, it's a touchdown for my squad. Or we get an idea, and maybe it's not that type of a week for Tez, and we realize, hey, he's a dynamic athlete, but yeah, he's a slot, or he's a guy you got to get in motion and keep off the line of scrimmage to fully maximize his production. But that's what I'm excited to find out. But I like his tape a ton. To me, he was definitely the better of the two Oregon receivers. Evan Stewart's going back to school anyways, but really love what Tez Johnson put on tape this year at Oregon. Just the frame that kind of concerns me about him. Xavier Restrepo, there's some Khalil Shakir to him. I really like Xavier Restrepo. In some of the mocks we've had up on the channel here and with 32B writers, I've been able to find a way to pair him up with Cam Ward. I would love to see something like that, because you can already see that chemistry built in. But this is a guy with, route running savvy to beat man coverage, football know-how to find those soft spots in zone and be a weapon and be a QB, QB friendly target there. He's always coming back to the football, but he's also very elusive and shifty and crafty in the open field too. So one of these guys that starts the field. He's not like the most dynamic. He's not going to have the best 40 of anybody, but I think the on-field speed is certainly there. Especially you're talking about primarily a slot-only guy. We'll see. This could be a good opportunity for him to prove, hey, I could play outside. But again, I'm thinking he's probably a slot-only dude at the next level. We'll see what the 40 is once we get to the combine and then we get to Miami Pro Day. But to me, again, I think savvy route runner, good yards after the catch weapon. Utilize this guy in the middle of the field. You see the Bills and the Chiefs have kind of changed the tune of their offense, changed gears. Instead of being push the ball down the field, 18 plus yards, per attempt. Like Mahomes when the last year they won the Super Bowl, 2.3 yards per attempt. Like that's insane, or yards per completion, whatever the stat was. Average depth of target. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it still tells a story of the Chiefs being more of that dink and dunk team because of the two high shells that they're looking and getting on a week in and week out basis. The Bills made that same switch once they moved Joe Brady into the OC role. If a team's looking for that type of guy who could eat up in the middle of the field, generate some easy offense, be a QB-friendly target, work the middle of the field, be a man and zone beater, Xavier Restrepo is someone to really, really like. And to me right now, I'm just having a hard time fathoming him getting out of the first 2 rounds, really. Like he's just a rock-solid, steady receiver with a ton of production under his belt and can win in a variety of ways. So what's not to like? Ty Felton, a really interesting Maryland receiver. Kyren Lacy, I don't want to say too much here. Obviously, we have the report, and he's cooperating with the investigation per his agent. So there's a lot going on there, and I am no legal expert. I am farthest thing from a lawyer, so I can't really speculate. He is a player I like on tape, though. Good size, like his ability to win over the middle of the field. The route running is maybe a little inconsistent, and the top end speed is going to be a question mark. But if you get a solid enough 40, he's kind of an interesting developmental X type in an offense. But a lot to be figured out there off the field. That's not my area of expertise. Then because the Iowa State guys that I like them both a lot. Jalen Knoll, I got a feeling he'll be, a little bit smaller than what Iowa State has him listed at. But nevertheless, he's not a guy. He's not of these two guys, he's not the one that wins with his size and physicality. He's a sharp route runner with long speed who can win deep down the field, good ball tracking, solid hands as well. So he's kind of the big play threat to Jaden Higgins, your prototypical X, 6'3", 215 pounds, wins those jump balls, can box out a cornerback. Two different guys, but they really complemented each other really, really well at Iowa State. And Noel could be a guy with a good week with his route running and long speed, man. Like this feels like a guy who should cook in the one-on-ones, should be a guy who firmly puts himself in top 100 conversations in a receiver class that's, a little bit lighter than the last couple of years draft. Still a good group, but maybe not quite as elite as the last 2 years. And then Jaden Higgins, I'm already kind of, could this guy go late 1? I don't think it's impossible, depending on what team's there and what they're looking for, right? I think late 1's a possibility. It becomes even more of a possibility with a good week here. So I'm really excited to see both these guys. I think they do it in different ways, but they're really talented and they present really tough matchups for corners to try to deal with these guys in one-on-one spots. Pat Bryant, not quite the athlete that a Jaden Higgins is, but kind of the same mold, right? Like just maybe a little bit of a toned down athletic version of Jaden Higgins, but really nice size, good, prototypical X traits there. And, I will say when he has the ball in his hands, he's got a couple of, runs after the catch at Illinois where it just feels like, yeah, he just kind of got away from the rest of the defense. And it's kind of like, okay, maybe there is a little bit more there than what you see as a route runner, right? And maybe that's like the next step, right? Remember T. Higgins coming out of Clemson and, wasn't the sharpest route runner, but you saw him after the catch. You're like, there's wiggle there and there's good explode. Like, yeah, he's big and he's not the fastest guy, but he's not like a total slouch of an athlete either. And he's got speed to pull away. And all that kind of culminated into like, this guy can be a better route runner. And I think over the course of his career, he's gotten better in that area. Could the same thing happen here with Pat Bryant? Is there more athletic, traits there than what I see as a route runner that then gives you hope to buy into? Yeah, like we can add some explosiveness, add some suddenness into his routes. And if so, then yeah, there's a big reason why to like him. So right now, I don't know. He's kind of like, again, toned down version of Jaden Higgins in a lot of ways. Not a perfect comp, but, just more or less simplifying the analysis here. I can see fourth round, for right now, Pat Bryant, day 3, probably, one of the first receivers off the board on day 3. If I had to guess right now, with a good Senior Bowl, he certainly puts himself in that top 100 mix. In some ways, this is a class that has a lot of big body receivers, but honestly, like you go back through this list, Elic Ayomanor, Brew McCoy's got some size, Savion Williams, but again, kind of used all over the field. So I wouldn't really put him as a big body guy. Jack Beck, I kind of almost like as a power slot. So you're kind of looking at this and you're like, 6'2 Lacy, 6'3 Higgins, Bryant's got some good size. There may not be a whole lot of these. And then, of course, Tedero and McMillan at the top of the receiver class. But still, once you get past, Ted and some of these other guys, there might not be a whole lot of big body X types readily available. We'll see as I get deeper and deeper in this class. I may find some more guys that I really like. And Arian Smith is definitely one of those guys to like in that bigger receiver kind of category. But that being said, it does feel like it's a little bit slimmer pickings versus the speed guys or the slot guys and things of that nature. Speaking of Arian Smith, receiver from Georgia, and obviously this was a tough year, and actually thinking of the wrong Georgia receiver, 6 foot 185. So even Smith, not really the biggest of guys. So even more to the point of, Pat Bryant, his body type alone may kind of boost him up the board just because depending on what type of receiver you're looking for, there may not be that much of a supply. But anyways, Arian Smith, it was a tough year for Georgia receivers. It was, talked about a lot. It was, a group in my mind that kind of let down Carson back, but he also took a step back too. So it's twofold there for sure. But a good opportunity for him to kind of separate himself and distance the image of Georgia receivers in a bad year. Like, can he stand out on his own at the Senior Bowl? That'd be a really big one there. Let's go into the tight ends. Maliki I haven't heard the exact pronunciation on this, so we're going to stick with Maliki. But I like what I see on tape. I haven't seen every single one of his games just yet, but solid athlete, and I also like him as a run blocker too. So good opportunity for me to get to see a little bit more of him. Elijah Arroyo is a really underrated athlete in this class. Good route runner, soft hands. Like, I like a lot of what Arroyo brings to the table. And in a lot of other classes where the tight end position maybe isn't quite this deep, he would have stood out as one of the best, best guys in the class, right? Like, I think about the tight end from Penn State last year that went, the third round to the Giants, Theo Johnson. In a lot of ways, like, what you wanted Johnson to get better at, like, Arroyo's already there. And he's an awesome athlete. And we'll see. Once we get the combine numbers, we'll get to see, who was the better athlete of these two. I'm just kind of pulling out, a situational and different player as a comparison here, just kind of out of thin air. But Theo Johnson was a really good athlete, but it felt like an unfinished product in regards to route running and, 2 years ago, some drop problems. Arroyo, I feel like, comes with, the athletic profile without as much work. He's just in a way deeper tight end class. So he's been kind of lost in the shuffle, but I think a solid enough inline blocker to where you could use him all 3 downs, use him in line, use him off, play him in the slot. I like Elijah Arroyo a lot. He's just kind of been lost in the shuffle. Jackson Hawes, then you get Gunnar Helm, who I think definitely has the size to play in line, good yards after the catch ability, kind of like a solid tight end across the board. I don't know if there's any one trait to his game that you look at and say, this is what Helm does better than anybody else. I don't know if it's that. He's just kind of a jack of all trades, really solid across the board. And because of that, you draft a Gunnar Helm on day 2. Like, I have a hard time thinking your team's going to be disappointed with that pick. And more likely than not, you're just going to be like, yeah, it was, it's kind of an easy guy to keep on the field and an easy guy to get production out of because he can do a little bit of everything. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Gunnar Helm. I think this is him. Arroyo is probably a little bit lower in regards to consensus rankings. I could see a world where Arroyo bumps his stock to be in this same spot, but I think with a good week at the Senior Bowl, Gunnar Helm could lock himself in the top 64. And it's a good tight end class. Don't get me wrong. And that may push the value of these guys down, but he's a really good football player. And I think, top 64, definitely the top 96, top 101, I think is technically what's in the first 3 rounds. He should definitely go somewhere in there. Kevin Bartholomew, and then a little bit further down, Jake Brinkstole. Like both these guys, still need to see more of them. I'm just, a little bit slower to catch up on those 2 guys. So I'm excited to see more of them, both at the Senior Bowl, but also going to watch some more before I get down there. But I know specifically Brinkstole has got he's got some fans there. So I'm excited to see more about him, and I'm excited to see what the hype's all about. One of my guys in the tight end position, though, I love Mason Taylor, man. I love the size, good blocker, really fluid athlete, really smooth, and just QB's best friend, like the size, but also coming back to the football. The ability to, and you see it, especially the Ole Miss game. He has the big play late in that one where, Nussmeier's going off script. He's just looking for any sort of help. And Mason Taylor's kind of working back towards them and finding some space in the open field. So I at least with Nussmeier, he's kind of got that chemistry to be able to create and be more of a threat once the play breaks down too, which I also like. And sometimes that's just luck and that's the right play. And sometimes it's, some tight ends just aren't the athlete that others are to be able to create and be a part of that. Oh, the play's broken down. Can somebody get open and make a play for me? Mason Taylor, I think, is a really nice athlete. And that's part of why I think, when play breaks down, he can continue to be a threat and a part of the offense. So I like Mason Taylor a good bit. And then Harold Fannin Jr. Those 2 guys are kind of right now battling for like my tight end 3. In a lot of ways, I think I like Taylor more. But Fannin, dude, he's just got so much production. You line him up, you can play X, you can play in the slot, you can play off the line of scrimmage, you can play on the line of scrimmage. 6'4", 230 is not necessarily ideal weight, but there was kind of an Isaiah Likely thing about him, way to his game, where it's like, he may not be the most dominant run blocker, but he gets in the way of people, right? So, maybe it's getting him into a wide zone scheme, right? Like, I don't think San Francisco's going to draft him because they got George Kittle, but let's just use that as an example. Or like a Miami, right? Tim Brugler had a mock where he goes to Miami. You're going to see Jonnu Smith comps, and I think that's it's a good landing spot for him because get him out in space, and it's just about this athlete getting to a spot on the field, beat the defense to that spot. And that's where I think Fannin's athleticism kind of outweighs where maybe 230 is not driving. Like if this is a gap scheme, 230, you're going to drive dude off the line of scrimmage against a 260, 270-pound defensive end. That's a tall order to ask. But when you're talking about those zone schemes, then it's about, hey, guy, be an athlete, get to this space before the defense can. And then you're giving the running back the opportunity to look at the field, use his vision, when's the right time to take that one cut up the field. That's where I think he'll play a lot more. So I actually really like that Miami landing spot from Dane's mock. I think, the Jonnu Smith comps are definitely going to be out there. Delaney Walker is another one I saw out there. That's, a name from the past, man. I almost forgot about Delaney Walker. So I appreciated seeing some of those comps out there. Comps aren't necessarily my favorite thing in the world, but sometimes they are a little helpful if you're new to the draft space to kind of give you a little bit of a foray into like, okay, loosely, who is this guy? I don't love it. Sometimes I think it paints the wrong picture, but I think the Jonnu Smith, Delaney Walker for Harold Fannin, that's a pretty solid idea of like what you're getting out of him as a player. But this is going to be a great opportunity. We're going to see what he looks like as a blocker too. So this is a big week for him in that regard. TJ Dupree is also a player I'm interested to see. But let's go ahead and get on to the running backs. Trevor Etienne, of course, related to Travis. But yeah, in running back, I will say like the Senior Bowl is not always the best outlet for them until maybe you get the game right. But I will say like the main thing I'm looking for out of a lot of these guys is like third down value. What do you look like as a blocker? What do you look like in the pass catching drills? And also it's just like confirmation. This guy looks like, a 4.4 guy to me on tape, or this guy looks like he could run in the 4.3s, or, like a Cam Scadaboo, I've heard some stuff and we'll talk about him in just a second. Seen some stuff, on X saying, 4.6, 4.65. Okay. Who knows if we make it down to the Senior Bowl and it's like, nah, he looks faster than that. Like top end speed looks better than that. So it's a nice opportunity to kind of gauge with what you're seeing on tape. What does it look like in person? So as someone who hasn't gotten to see a lot of these guys, on the field in person, like maybe people from ESPN and NFL Network have, this is a really helpful tool for me to see. Does it match up with what I see on film? ETN, I want to see that top end speed. I also want to see, again, the third down value. What does he bring in there? Because I think he could be a solid first, second down. I think the vision's there. Good speed, good first step, good power behind it, enough one cut ability. There's enough there to be a first, second down guy, but what does he do? What does he look like as a third down or a passing situation guy? That's what I want to find out. Brashad Smith, I have a feeling I think he's going to be one of my guys as a running back in this running back class. Receiver turned running back is like one of those, skill set, backgrounds to a player where I'm like, that's tempting. That's alluring. And of course, it works out with Tyron Tracy. And there's also misses, right? Like Antonio Gibson hasn't become awesome, but still had some moments there in Washington. But yeah, another guy where it's like, what does he look like specifically as a pass protector? Because like obviously the receiver background, I'm going to go ahead and trust that he's a solid route runner and he's got good hands. What does he look like as a pass protector? That's kind of what I want to see. Brayshaw Tutton or Tutton, I've heard both, but I'm going to go with Tutton here. Tutton's a really interesting one. The best reps that he has are awesome. Like tons of wiggle, juice to make you miss in the phone booth, long speed, but power. And it's really just his vision. You know, sometimes he's just a little too quick to make a decision. Sometimes just picking the wrong hole. And then other times where it's, you know, it's like, hey, right hole, right read, decisive about it, and a big chunk play. So, you know, for him, it's just, you know, again, it's not a perfect gauge of the Senior Bowl for this, but I would like to see what his vision looks like and how that plays. But ultimately, we might have to wait till like the actual Senior Bowl game to get a little bit of a better feel for that. Woody Marks, another guy that almost kind of like, I don't want to helmet scout here, but Marshawn Lloyd, there's a lot to like there. It was just, you know, Lloyd, it was like the vision. He sees a lot of light boxes. Woody Marks, not necessarily the same issues, but I do like a lot of what's there. I just need to see a little bit more of it. A guy I need to finish watching some more film on. So not fully done with Woody Marks, but I'm excited to see him down at the Senior Bowl. Ollie Gordon, yeah, talk about an interesting player here. You go from Dope Walker winner to like, what is this guy? You know, just didn't look like the same dude in regards to juice, and maybe that was injuries. Maybe it's also seeing 8 guys in a box pretty much week in and week out. To me, that's that. And even 2 years ago where he was, you know, pretty clearly or one of, if not the best running back in the country, right? Like he was awesome 2 years ago. That was still an offensive line that was like in the 100s in regards to like PFF run blocking grade. Like not a good unit, like nowhere near that. But he was just making a ton of it happen after contact. And that's not necessarily super sustainable, right? Like you can get away with it for a while, but eventually, you know, body's going to wrap you up. You know, like it's just, can only ask a running back to do so much there. I mean, case in point, look at, you know, not a guy we're going to talk about in this video, other than this example. Ashton GT, 16 forced missed tackles, I think it was, against Penn State. But he had like 30 carries for 100 yards, you know, like ballpark, that area. So basically 3 yards a rush. But he made 16 forced missed tackles. That's crazy. You know, so only so much a running back can do. You know, in a lot of the yards that GT got, it's just like, if that guy's not a freak, he doesn't even get that. And there's moments of that with Ollie Gordon as well. But this is going to be, and again, Senior Bowl, not the perfect gauge for looking at a running back, but maybe once we get into the game, you know, defenses have to play it a little more honest. Maybe we get to see that old Ollie Gordon from 2 years ago. But I still think that player's in there. And it may just take like, hey, new situation. And also the NFL, he's not going to be a bell cow. He's not going to have nearly the number of touches and reps that Oklahoma State put on him too. So that in and of itself might make him a more efficient player too. Khalil Mullins, Donovan Edwards, really nice compliments to each other. Mullins kind of took over that backfield over the course of the season at Michigan, kind of more the between the tackles bruiser with good speed as well. Donovan Edwards, of course, if you want Michigan win it all, you know, obviously not this year, but the year before, you know, the big playability that comes with Donovan Edwards. There's just some inconsistency there that, again, I don't know if this is necessarily the event to iron it out and get an idea of what that looks like, but it will be really excited to see what his athleticism and that explosiveness looks like up front. And odds are I'm going to see how explosive and how fast he is, and I'm going to have a hard time quitting him. That's going to be the downside of seeing these guys up close. It's going to be hard to quit some of these insane athletes that I think like guys like Donovan Edwards are. Damian Martinez, transfer from Oregon State to Miami, good downhill bruiser. Maybe it wasn't the most flashy year that, you know, coming into the season, I was like, dude, him and Cam Ward, what a land for Miami in the transfer portal. And Ward, you know, potentially number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, you know, so like, yeah, he lived up to the transfer hype. But Martinez was maybe a little lost, a little forgotten in the radar, but down the stretch, man, some big games. So, yeah, again, I like him as a downhill bruiser type. Again, this class is a ton. I've talked about this in other pods, but you get in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, it's like, what running back flavor do you want? You know, do you want spicy food? Do you want something sweet? Do you like chocolate? You know, it just comes down to what you're looking for and what the taste you're looking to satisfy your offense is. If you're looking for that downhill bruiser, I think Damian Martinez is, you know, kind of lost in the shuffle. He'll do that job. Also, already shown that like he's a solid option. I think he was a really good player for them on 3rd down this year. We're going to get that confirmed here at the Senior Bowl, but I think he's a 3rd down friendly weapon, good blocker, and can be used as a pass catcher as well. So excited to see if that's confirmed here at the Senior Bowl. But yeah, guys, maybe a little under the radar right now. Let me get Devin Neal. I've been talking him up, and if you follow me on X, you've seen me talk about Devin Neal a couple times. Big fan of his game. Super shifty. Love the explosiveness. Carved up Colorado, good vision, can absolutely make you miss in a phone booth. I think he only had 23 catches this year, but I think there's more juice to squeeze out of Devin Neal at the next level in regards to him being a pass catcher. The question is going to be his blocking, and also like kind of like Bucky Irving, like he looks super elusive and agile. What's the top end speed? Could we get that confirmed? Keep in mind, Bucky Irving, he was like 4.55, 4.56, if I remember right. So if Neal's anywhere near that ballpark, and also the other thing about Irving was he was sub 205, like sub 200 pounds, 196, if I remember correctly. I can see a world where Neal's kind of in that same ballpark. So it'll be interesting to see his weights. It'll also be interesting to see what the top end speed looks like in person. And of course, we'll get that confirmed once we go to the combine and the pro day. But going to be interesting to compare him and the athletic traits, the measurables to a guy like Bucky Irving and how that stacks up. I'm not saying that's his comp, not by any stretch, but those were some of the knocks on Bucky Irving that maybe knocked him down the board a little bit and made him a 4th round pick. When in reality, in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that guy should have gone a lot higher than that. And I say that as someone who, on my channel last year, I wasn't the biggest Bucky Irving fan. I didn't hate him. But I didn't see him being as good as he was as a rookie. So hand up, I was wrong on the Bucky Irving evaluation. So I really like Devin Neal. So I'm hoping this is like, hey, me seeing the error in my ways. Where can my evaluation process get better? Okay, this Devin Neal guy might have some stuff that I need to, might force me to change how I look at some of these prospects. But I also just love watching him on broadcast too. So like you naturally gravitate to these guys. Then you check out the All-22 and hopefully it confirms it. And for me, it did with Devin Neal. RJ Harvey, man, I was just rewatching the Central Florida the UCF Iowa State game. Holy cow, Iowa State's defense was a run funnel. I watched that game, followed then by the Iowa game, and Caleb Johnson looks awesome in that. And then the Arizona State game, and it's like, man, run the ball against Iowa State. That was a good formula last year. But RJ Harvey, man, he's just like a train, man. When he hits that top speed, get off the track. You don't want anything to do with this guy and the power he plays with. But again, he's also got the long speed to not just be this, Gus Edwards 5 yards and a pound, and a pile of dust type of dude. He can do more than that. And, almost, again, not saying he's Derrick Henry, but he almost has that where it's like, if you don't touch him for 10 yards, like, good luck. Because not only is he the power, but he can move. Like, this guy has good top end speed. It's just going to come down to, like, once we get to the combine, what's that 20-yard shuttle? Like, how quickly, what acceleration are we talking about? And does that play at the next level? But I think RJ Harvey's a really fun player, and I actually really enjoyed going back to watch that Iowa State game. It's always fun. Sometimes when you're watching a prospect on film and you're watching them, you can kind of leave it. I'm not saying this is necessarily the case with RJ Harvey, but there's a lot of hype, a lot of noise. And then you kind of watch it and you're like, hey, he's a good player. But maybe you're just not on that same hype train that everyone else is on. And then you go back to watch a game for someone else. And then that player that you previously watched is like all of a sudden standing out. So, it's just sometimes you just need multiple looks at it. It's just kind of like an album, right? Like sometimes listen to it through, you're like, okay, that's good. And then that second, third, fourth time or whatever you listen to it through, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm understanding. Like I see it now. So still a lot of tape to be watched. A lot more stuff I got to do for a lot of these guys. But RJ Harvey, really enjoyed rewatching that Iowa State game, and I'm excited to see him down in the Senior Bowl. Jarquez Hunter, yeah, he's, I saw a quote with someone who had interviewed him. I apologize for not remembering who had the interview with Jarquez there, but he said, I've got everything NFL teams are looking for, and I love that. Like, and he's right. Prototypical build, good ability to run between the tackles. I think he's going to check out in regards to long speed and all the other athletic testing, kind of benchmarks you want to hit. This is kind of a case point. Like, what does he look like as a third down guy? I think he's going to check out there, but I just want to get that confirmed there. So I'm really excited to see Jarquez Hunter. And also, like, ton hats off to Jarquez Hunter. There was no reason for him to stay at Auburn as long as he did. So, I give him hats off. If I'm remembering his player profile right, he was there for 4 years, right? So, the guy who could have left and maybe had some opportunities elsewhere at more successful programs, didn't have some of the off the field, tumultuous stuff that has gone on around Auburn the last few years. He could have gotten out of that, but he stayed loyal to the program that gave him a shot. So I hats off to that. It's definitely a personality trait that I like. Cam Scadaboo, I mean, did you watch the college football playoff? Have you heard of this guy? So he's this guy that really started to pick up steam, gaining a lot of momentum in the draft community down the course of the regular season. And then, of course, Mr. Everything against Texas, right? Like throwing passes, sluggo routes for 62 yards. And, of course, like you get in the second half, and they're starting to lean on that Texas defense. And he's, it goes from 2 yards in the first half to it's a 5-yard run. And then it goes from 5 yards in the first half to a 12-yard run in the second half. They just started to lean on that Longhorns defense that was really good in the first half. And some of that's just, Scadabout's a tank, man. So I'm interested to see what what his speed looks like up close and personal. And then also the third down stuff. We clearly see the hands, but it's going to be good to see him in the blocking drills. He's definitely got the frame to make you think, yeah, this guy can step up. And, if there's a free rusher coming up the middle of the pocket, like, Scadabo's like got the goods to be able to thwart that and keep a clean pocket for your quarterback, but just need to see it. Need to see it confirmed. And then we get to the most important position, and what we'll round out today's talk with the quarterbacks. It's an interesting group, no doubt about it. Dylan Gabriel, his success is, if he is as successful as he was in college at the next level, he is going to absolutely be an outlier in so many different ways. Like his size, I think he's a good athlete, but I still don't think that's even like over, like Kyler Murray's small, but what an athlete, right? I don't know if Gabriel's necessarily bringing that to the table. What he is bringing is unfazed willingness to throw with anticipation, unbelievable accuracy, very nice touch, football IQ, very good pocket presence as well. He just does these little things, right? And it's just kind of the technical stuff of the position. The arm leaves something to be desired. He's a good athlete, but I don't think enough to overcome the shortcomings, literally, in his frame and stuff like that. This is a good opportunity to showcase maybe I'm wrong, right? And quarterback's tough at the Senior Bowl. You're coming in and learning an offense that, you're opening up this playbook for the first time. And you're working with the receivers for the first time, really. Tez Johnson's going, so he's got that. He's going to be throwing a lot of passes to a lot of guys not named Tez Johnson. What does that look like? Especially for a guy who is supremely talented at timing and throwing with anticipation. What does it look like when you're not playing with your guys? So really fascinated to see what Dillon Gabriel looks like in this setting. It's very different, but also not the biggest, not the fastest, not the strongest arm. Can he overcome that? This is a great opportunity to take him out of that Oregon offense, which has its advantages, right? And seeing if what plays for Dillon Gabriel still plays in this setting. Because if so, we might need to, there's outliers about Dillon Gabriel, don't get me wrong, but in a weaker quarterback class, he might just be a hashtag good football player, and you might have to rethink your evaluation there. And then we get to Jackson Dart, and, Dart, and we'll talk about him in a little bit once we get to my, top 5, but we'll go ahead and just kind of get the nuts and bolts of it. And I just rewatched 4 games of his. There's things to like about Jackson Dart. Don't get me wrong. Snappy release. You see there's a live arm there. No doubt about it. Like the guy, and he can get it out quick, but the ball will jump out of his hand. And he's got good mobility. And throwing the fact that if he's 6'2", 225, like Ole Miss has him listed as, awesome. That's prototypical for nowadays. So there's a lot to like there, but it's a very college-friendly offense. Think about Matt Corral, like in the league for 2 years and then into the XFL. I think Dart's probably the more talented of those two. Like if we're just comparing those two guys, I would take Dart over Corral for sure. He was like my QB 5, I think that year. Corral, maybe QB 6. I can't fully remember off the top of my head, but in a bad quarterback class to be that low in my rankings, that's not a good sign. And again, there's things to like about Dart, and he's still making decisions, right? Like it's a lot of RPOs, but you're still having to make a decision. You're still reading defenders. So there is something there. It's totally half baked. It's not like playing college football in easy mode where the guy will eventually get open. Not that, but it's a lot of shotgun play action, which that in and of itself, not a whole lot of that at the NFL level. And then, like the Wake Forest game was one of the games I watched. And they're just, when it comes to the vertical stuff, they're just absolutely giving Wake Forest a secondary everything they can handle. Especially early on, there's a miscommunication. There's a wide open touchdown that he just, it couldn't have been an easier throw for him to make. And then all of a sudden, those hitches are wide open because Wake Forest knows, hey, like they got dudes that we just can't keep up with on the vertical routes. We got to give them the hitches. And then those hitches are there. Then they start playing that. And some other things open up. And that's credit to Lane Kiffin. That's why he was given a headshot, a shot as a head coach of the NFL. But because of that, it's really hard to look at Jackson Dart and say, like, okay, what is this going to look like at the next level? I just think he's going to need at least a year, maybe 2. To really get integrated within an NFL offense. And if you give him that time, I'm willing to say it could work. But ultimately, even in this college-y offense, like there's still like wide open guys he'll miss. And sometimes it's, the primary reads making you look left side, so you're missing the guy on the right side, whatever, not holding that against him. But there's open throws where he looks directly at a guy coming open over the middle of the field, and he's just not going to make the throw for whatever reason. Or he's too willing to dump it off to the running back too soon. Like, hey, no, that vertical route from the tight end, it's there, it's open. Just, okay, you dumped it off to the running back prematurely. So there's still things I don't necessarily love about his game. And there's, when you play in this college-friendly, QB-friendly offense that already I'm struggling with how it's going to translate to the next level, and you're leaving meat on the bone, not making the perfect reads all the time, it's like, now you're making it tough because the reads are only going to get that much harder to make at the next level. So he's a tough one to evaluate, but that's why the Senior Bowl's imperative to his draft stock. Playing with new guys, you're outside the Lane Kiffin offense. What does it look like? So big week for him. I'm glad I got to go back and check it out. I figured this was going to be how I came down on Jackson Dart, but that being said, it was good to get it confirmed. And again, I like him as a thrower of the football. I just don't know if the quarterback skill set's going to translate to the next level perfectly. Anyways, moving on to the next quarterback we'll talk about here. Will Howard, Riley Leonard, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm going to try not to be too biased when it comes to the Riley Leonard side of it. But hey, two guys that are playing in a national championship, that definitely bodes well for both these guys. And Will Howard against Tennessee and against Oregon was freaking nails, dude. Like there was a lot of open throws, right? Like the Jeremiah Smith touchdown against Oregon. It's like, yeah, it's wide open. And also, like, your defense is playing lights out. You're getting big plays in the run game. He was in an advantageous situation, but he's still making some throws, right? Like, especially against Tennessee, and you get that wheel route left side to Jeremiah Smith where he's got to step on his defender, and Will Howard led it perfectly. Step out in front of him, couldn't have been better. So, and he's also a guy who comes with a lot of experience, but as a starter, but just in college in general, solid frame, good athleticism. And in a weak quarterback class, it's like, yeah, good week in Mobile. He can quickly become QB4 in this class. Now, I don't know when QB4 is getting drafted this year, that being said, but he could quit pretty quickly with a good week, move himself up the board. And then you get Riley Leonard, who, Jim Nagy's talking on the college football podcast with Max Chadwick and Dalton Wasserman, and he's saying all he's hearing is day 2 grades from Riley Leonard, which that's interesting. And, he's obviously working with Mike Denbrock, who was just the OC for Jaden Daniels. And you see a lot of that same stuff, hitches, goes post, that's kind of the vertical, that's kind of the passing tree. But also, like, they really tap into him as a runner. And he's a very different type of runner than Jaden Daniels. He's electric and very elusive. And then Riley Leonard kind of brings a little bit more power to his game. But it's been kind of a balanced ask from Denbrock to Riley Leonard. National championship TBD. We'll see what happens there. That'll say a lot. It's a tough defensive line that he's facing against a Notre Dame offensive line that's good, but not quite elite, and especially the tackle positions where they're quite a bit younger. But really interested to see what he looks like in that spot. Obviously, I haven't seen the national championship. I'm filming this on Monday afternoon, so only a few hours away from getting to see them play. So I'm really excited. That's going to be a huge game for their stock. But also, like, I'm fascinated. Like, if these guys are coming, we're a week away, and they're going to play a national championship game on Monday the 20th. So these guys are also coming into this event with the longest season of anybody that's going, Notre Dame and Ohio State guys. That's tough. That's a lot to ask of these guys. So I'm really interested to see what this week holds for them. I haven't watched the Memphis quarterback yet, so I won't speak on that. Tyler Shough, man, he was a draft crush of mine from a few years ago because he's the guy stepping in for Herbert. He's got this big arm, prototypical build. Maybe not the best athlete, but he's got a lot of other stuff. But he's just been erratic as a passer, inconsistent. He's kind of bounced around college football. He's definitely on the older side as well. But I think Louisville, he's kind of settled into who he is. And honestly, that being said, like, you dropped to be an NFL backup in a play action heavy offense. So if you're the 49ers, you want a new backup quarterback, like, he's kind of interesting there. That said, they also dropped how much play action rate they were using this year. So not necessarily perfect, but like under center, play action, run the ball well, set up these shot plays for a guy who does have a big arm and who is willing to stand in the pocket and take a hit and deliver the football. So he's a specific type of quarterback. And because of that, he's almost certainly probably a career back at the next level. That being said, based on your offense, he's a very interesting one. Or like if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and as a Steelers fan, please do not like sign me up for this. Like, trust me, this is like anything but an endorsement. But let's just say they bring back Russell Wilson. Tyler Shough for that offense then becomes kind of an interesting, backup to that. Under center play action, chuck the ball down the field when things are working well. That's kind of the archetype that we're talking about here with Shough. But I think this is a good week for him because you're going to see the size and you're going to see a very strong arm. And that's going to play in the clips that you see on X and things like that. So it's just going to come down to timing, right? And especially with the play action stuff that he was good at with Louisville, he had time to kind of build in that chemistry and understand where his receiver is going to be at this part of the route, whatever. It can be a lot harder when you're throwing to new guys. And then last but not least, Jalen Milroe, which we can almost just use this as an opportunity to go ahead and talk about the 5 guys I am most anticipated to see this upcoming week at the Senior Bowl. Let's jump over to this. Here is my top 5 most anticipated players for the Senior Bowl. And we'll go ahead and talk about Jalen Milroe because he is down at number 1. I'll actually go back to the screen we were just on. Sorry, still getting acclimated with StreamYard. But nevertheless, I'll actually just move myself over here. But Jalen Milroe, last guy we were talking about, he's my number 1 most anticipated because, duh. I mean, the guy is just a monster of an athlete, just absolute freakish speed. Good build, and he's got an absolute cannon of an arm. Like, he's got plenty of throw power to push the ball deep down the field. It's just the motion's erratic. The feet sometimes inconsistent. There's just a lot to be cleaned up there. I do think he's further along than someone like a Malik Willis was, which is encouraging, and we've seen the strides that Malik Willis has made over the course of a few years in the league. But then you can also look to an Anthony Richardson who, like 55% completion percentage is like a good week for AR right now, which I still have hope in the player. Love the athletic traits. Love the throwing traits too. Like there's a lot to work with Anthony Richardson. It's just going to take time and more work, and hopefully Shane Steichen can get that out of him. There's more work that comes with Milroe in a lot of ways than Anthony Richardson, because I thought Richardson's throwing mechanics were solid. He's just a guy that needs to see the field more and needs more reps against high-end defenses. And you understand, hey, it's a too high shell. This is where I need to be going with the football. Okay, this looks like man coverage. This route's going to be open in this, but he just needs more of that. Milroe needs more of that, and we need to refine and get more consistency out of the throwing motion. So a lot of work to be done there. But like I've said multiple times here in the podcast, of any of the guys in this class, he's got the tools you want to bank on. So this is a big week for him at the Senior Bowl. And I think because of that, he's got the tools that you would most want out of anybody in this class. It's going to show. Like, he's going to look like the most athletic guy of these guys. And there's good athletes going. Riley Leonard's a good athletic quarterback, but Jalen Milroe is going to look like a different beast out there. And then you talk about Tyler Shook's arm. Yeah, well, Milroe's arm is going to look absolutely live, even next to someone like a Tyler Shook. So it's just going to come down to can we find consistency? Can he be consistently accurate through four days of practice? And if he is, and the accuracy starts to look like less of a concern, and the footwork looks a little bit more consistent, you're going to start hearing buzz. And all of a sudden, Jalen Milroe is going to be back in that first round mix, which is going to be a really fun conversation, I'm sure. And there's going to be people who want to stick to their things, their thoughts of him as a prospect right now, and not willing to budge. And there's going to be some who see the Senior Bowl stuff and are willing to change their opinion. So just going to be really interesting rhetoric. Or he has a bad week, and it kind of sets his draft status into stone, and he's going to go a lot later. So there's a lot to gain and a lot to lose potentially here from Jalen Milroe. And then that takes us to number 2, Jackson Dart. Already just talked about him a good bit. Love the arm. There's something there. Like, he's a good throw of the football. Snappy release, like I said. It's just, can we get it consistently? And what does it look like in a pro style offense? When he's making more conventional reads, not just RPO, play in and play out. Josh Conerly Jr., really big fan of his game. And I guess, kind of let's pump the brakes here. Actually, we'll go back. We'll talk about the offensive lineman just a little bit. Totally forgot that we didn't talk about offensive line, but Josh Conerly has taken a huge step forward in his game this year. Much improved pass protector, really nice athlete too. He's 315 pounds. Maybe you can add a little bit to that frame, but love the athleticism, love the steps and progress he's made as a pass protector. Going to be great to see him in the one-on-one drills. Savion Williams, we talked about his wide alignment, but a freakish build, a really nice athlete. Can't wait to see him in the one-on-ones. He could make himself a lot of money there. And then Brashad Smith, again, not a great outlet for studying running backs. But that being said, I want to see the athleticism, what that looks like day one. Can he hold up as a blocker? Because I think everything else is there for Brashad Smith. If he showcases to me that, hey, this is a guy who could be a consistent down in and down out blocker, or like third down, got to have it. He can step up in the pocket and make that block a quarterback needs to get that throw off. If he can showcase that, then we're talking for sure. All right, let's go back real quick. Sorry to all the offensive line junkies out there real quick. Let's hit on some of these names that we haven't hit on just yet. Jack Nelson, I still need to go back and check him out, right tackle from Wisconsin, but he was someone I liked over the summer, so I want to see more of him. Charles Grant, he's only about 300 pounds, so I've heard some conversations about him being a guard, but I love the pass protection tape that's there at William & Mary. And the other intriguing part of this conversation is just that. Small school guy, step up in competition. We've seen where it's made a lot of guys a lot of money. Like Quinn Myers goes from someone you've never heard of from Wisconsin Whitewater. What's that? To, yep, this guy's going to go in the top 100, and now he's one of the best interior offensive linemen in the NFL. This is the opportunity that's presented to Charles Grant. I'm not saying he's going to be Quinn Myers, but it's that type of opportunity. In the Senior Bowls, for offensive linemen, versatility is key. And you're going to hear me say that about a few of these guys here, including the next dude, Wyatt Milam. Showcasing the ability to play guard, center, the other tackle position is going to be huge. That's going to be ultimately what makes a lot of these guys a lot of money. Wyatt Milam, to that point, I've heard some say that they kind of like him at center. I think it was Trevor Sickma from PFF who might have said that. I hope I'm not wrong on that. That's intriguing. I've also seen a lot of people who think he's a guard. But he's also had a great year at tackle. So a lot of versatility he could showcase. And if he gets to take the chance at getting snaps at multiple positions, could make him a lot of money. But I love him in a zone blocking scheme at tackle. Would love it even more as a guard. He does get sometimes a little top heavy, a little bit over ahead of himself. So maybe moving inside to guard is the better fit there. Jonah Monheim, a guy who's played some tackle. He's moved inside to play center this year at USC. It wasn't the best year, but I think as the year went on, he got better and better with USC. Maybe got a little bit more comfortable there at center, but a guy that has already played a lot of different positions in college. I want to see where he looks best, and that will hopefully give me an evaluation of, is this a guy? Should I be talking about him with the center group? Should I be talking about him with the guards? Where's his home position at the next level? Marcus Embo, right tackle for Purdue. Yeah, he played really well there. Love the movement skills, but ultimately I do think he's someone that probably going to move inside to play guard or center. Jordan Reed of ESPN really likes him at center. Another one of these guys where the rhetoric is the same for me here. Like, I want to see him take snaps at every position possible, and I want to see where he looks best and where he looks most comfortable. And he's one of the, Christian Haynes, multiple positions that we got to see him play at. And the guard reps were better than center, but nevertheless showed the willingness to go do something like that. Christian Mahogany did the same thing. That's what I want to see from Marcus Embo. Willingness to compete at a lot of different positions. And let's find which one you're best at. To me, I think it's going to be on the interior. Ejani Cornelius, up and down a season, but I still think there's a lot of potential in Cornelius. So, and I think he's a tackle. I think he's got a lot of those traits that say tackle. Good mover as well. So, with a good week of the one-on-ones, like if he's better at the one-on-ones than what some of the tape may say, and it's also tough, right? Like, you get to that Ohio State game, not much was going well for Oregon in that one, and you fall behind so much that these guys start pinning their ears back and just teeing off as pass rushers, and you're not really putting Cornelius in the best spot possible there. So a chance for him to kind of clean his slate after that last tough game for him to end his college career with. Josh Conerly Jr., we just talked about. Big fan of him. Another small school guy here in Graysville. To me, guard or center. Just not one of these guys where I want to see it. He plays left tackle for North Dakota State, but I want to see what he looks like at guard and specifically center. We don't have a whole lot of great center options, and there's still something because maybe it's Embo, maybe it is Wyatt Milam at that spot. Maybe it is Monheim. So we just got to figure out who is really going to be this center class basically this upcoming year. Anthony Belton, I know there was some love for him coming into the season. I really like him as a run blocker, a lot of power, may ultimately be a guard at the next level too. So I'm excited to see some of the measurements and what all we kind of come to a consensus on with Anthony Belton. Again, hopefully a guy that we get to see take some guard reps. Armand Membu, one of the best tackles in this class. He's 6'3", but I think the arm length's going to check out. But good to get the eyes on that and see if that is truly the case. But I love the movement skills, mirroring, but also a ton of power, both in regards to his anchor and pass pro, but driving guys off the line of scrimmage in the run game. Big fan of Armand Membu, a guy that right now, top half of the first round, I think is certainly there for Membu. This is the week where that can become, solidified. Kind of like Talise Fuwanga, where it's like, I think he'll go top half the first round. Good week here will kind of confirm that. And I think Fuwanga was up and down. Not every rep was perfect, which is kind of tough to be for O-line, D-line. You're not going to win every single rep. But he won a majority of them, and he looked pretty good. And he went in top half the first round, right? So, same could certainly be true here for Armand Membu. Ariante Ursary, another guy where I'm interested to see him at guard just because he moves so well at 320. And another one of these guys, sometimes he gets out in front of his skis, right? He gets a little top heavy, a little lean. Happy. And he also struggles with the leverage battle too. So against small bendy edge rushers, maybe it is best if we move him inside, get him some bigger body types to match up with. So I'm interested to see what he looks like on the interior. And if that, kind of signals to me, guard instead of tackle. But I do think he's a solid tackle as well. Emory Jones to me is a guard. He just plays kind of squatty. He is a guard to me, but love him in the run game. Love the power there. Needs some refinement and pass protection. So excited to see what he looks like with the reps on the inside. Clay Webb, former Power 5 guy that then transferred down to Jacksonville State. If I remember right, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Might be a little off there. Maybe it was just 4 stars, but highly touted recruit. Used to play the Power 5, moves down, had an awesome year at Jacksonville State a year ago. This year, maybe the grades weren't quite as good, but I still think there's a lot of talent to be had there. And smaller school guy, I can see where he's kind of one of those later round gems for a lot of people. Or, good week of the Senior Bowl, he moves himself back into that, day 2 conversation. Let's see, who else? Tate Ratledge, one of the best guards to me. I really like him. Jared Wilson was an awesome center, a big part of that Georgia offensive line. I also like Dylan Fairchild, I'll be honest. I like all 3 of the Georgia interior offensive linemen. I'd probably go Ratledge, Wilson, Fairchild if I had to rank them. But I like Ratledge. I like him as a pass protector in specific. Solid enough mover to the next level, so I think I'd lead gap, but could be gap or zone. Jared Wilson, good athlete. I'm fine with either one. It's going to be tough shoes to fill, leaning in or filling in for Cedric Van Pran, but I think Wilson, in a lot of ways, did it more than admirable job at doing just that. Chase Luntz, this is a zone blocking tackle, and I think his movement skills, he'll make some money this week. I really do. I think that's the case. He'll showcase his movement skills, and all of a sudden these wide zone teams are going to start really keying in on Chase Lunt. He's become a name that if you're a fan of the 49ers, the Dolphins specifically, and you're looking for a guy that's the mid to late rounds who can fit with what you're looking for and fit that wide zone stuff, Chase Lunt, that's your guy. Ozzy Trapilo, a right tackle from Boston College. His dad also played at Boston College. A little bit late to his film, but I think there's a lot to like in Trapilo's game. And this is kind of the opportunity for me, especially considering I was a little bit later to the party here on Trapilo. It'd be a good opportunity for me to kind of catch up to consensus there. But former 5-star recruit, he's got starts at both left and right tackle, long arms, big dude. And in a good combination of nimble with it too, right? Like he's not just this, big lumbersome dude who can't move at all. Not Daniel Falele from a few years ago is now moving on the inside to kind of limit how much, he needs to move in the open field. Falele has also gotten better there. I will give him that. But there's also a little bit of nimbleness to Trappilo's game, which is kind of surprising for someone who's 6'7". Like this is a massive human being. I'm also excited to see the official weight too. I think BC has him at 310, 315. So I want to see what that official number is looking like. Jonas Avenaya, he's probably an interior offensive lineman, but I like the power and the drive and the run game. Good movement skills with it. Starts at both guard and tackle, so he does give you some Elijah Vera Tucker-esque flexibility, not a one-to-one comp, but just kind of throwing that out there for some added value there for Savaiinaea. And then Seth McLaughlin, he had a season end early for Ohio State, so he hasn't been playing in the college football playoff run, which is, it's like no Josh Simmons, no Seth McLaughlin. How is Ohio State doing this and turning it all over with their offensive line and dominating the run game? Been a big part of why it's been so impressive that they've been as good as they have been. But I'm excited to see Seth McLaughlin. TBD on if he's going to compete or if he can. I just don't know the official answer on that yet, so I don't want to speculate too far in advance, but hopefully he can. If he can, and he's just there to do the interviews and stuff, kind of shades of Hendon Hooker from a few years ago, where it's like, yeah, he's banged up, but he's just a high character guy, and that's going to boost his draft stock. So we'll still let him come down here and chat with teams. If that's the case, I think Seth McLaughlin, he's going to showcase like why he was a team captain, why he was one of the leaders on that offensive line, one of the leaders on that offense more generally. I think he's going to kind of, get some flowers for that in and of itself. And he's got good tape too. Like I think solid mid-round center option here, depending on what you're looking for out of that position. Apologies to the big uglies. I can't believe I forgot to go over the offensive line. You see the punters there, and my brain's like, nope, can't do it. But that does bring us to what the most important position, long snappers. I know that's why you're here clicking on this video. I'm just kidding. That is going to do it for our offensive side of the ball. Senior Bowl preview. It's going to be me and Zach Heiduck down covering all the action, man. And I do want to just kind of address, haven't gotten to see a whole lot of Zach here on the pod. We're hoping to have that change starting with the Senior Bowl, and then they're out. My schedule's just been absolutely crazy to start out 2025, but hopefully once we get through the end of January, things will start to become a little bit more normal. But would love to know your thoughts on the feedback and the style in which we've been running this show. And do you want to have a co-host on? And then, of course, once we get the Senior Bowl content, would love to have your thoughts on how that goes. Me working with Zach, would love any and all thoughts from this community. Would love to hear your thoughts both on YouTube, but of course on X as well. And if you don't want to leave a comment, you can also just hit me up on X. My DMs are open, so feel free to give me your thoughts and feedback there. Any and all opinions are welcomed, as long as you're not a dick. Then I will take your opinion for what it is worth. But guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Beyond the Tape. We're so excited to be down at the Senior Bowl covering this event. Second year the 32 Beat Writers has been there. First year of myself getting to go. So I am so pumped to be able to cover this content, give you guys day-by-day analysis of who won, who were the biggest winners, who were the biggest losers, what were the things that really stood out to us from each and every day of practice, and then we'll get you set and ready for everything you need to know for the Senior Bowl, which, of course, you can watch on Saturday, February 1st. So be sure to subscribe if you're new to the 32 Beat Writers YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter for all the updates and, of course, clips as well from some of the one-on-one drills down at the Senior Bowl. We're going to have you covered with everything you need to know from one of the biggest event. And really, like they say, the draft starts in Mobile. This is the kickoff to draft season. So be sure to follow 32 Beat Writers for all your updates. Be sure to like this video if you did enjoy it. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, my name is TJ. For 32 Beat Writers, we are signing off.